The boy was born on a quiet autumn morning, in a small town where everyone seemed to know each other. From the moment he arrived, he was different in a way that people could see immediately. He had the soft, distinct features of a child with Down syndrome, and his eyes held a gentle, curious light that seemed to notice everything around him. His parents loved him instantly, and they were determined to give him all the support and care they could. They knew life might be harder for him than for other children, but they also believed that he had a spirit that could shine in its own unique way. Even as a baby, he had an unusual fascination with sounds. While other babies were content with rattles or toys, he seemed mesmerized by the small piano his parents had in the corner of the living room. Whenever someone played, he would fix his gaze on the keys, following each movement with wide eyes. His tiny fingers would twitch and try to mimic the sounds he heard, even before he could speak clearly. His parents noticed this early and decided to encourage his curiosity. They would let him sit on a small bench beside them and gently guide his hands across the keys. At first, it was just random tapping, but slowly, patterns began to emerge as if the boy understood the music in a way beyond his years. As he grew older, his love for the piano only deepened. By the age of 4, he could remember simple tunes after hearing them just once. His parents would play soft melodies in the evenings and he would copy them, sometimes hitting wrong notes, but always with focus and determination. The music seemed to calm him in ways nothing else could. On days when he felt frustrated or tired, just sitting at the piano brought a kind of peace that made the world feel brighter. His parents began to realize that this was not just a hobby. It was something that made him feel alive. Something that gave him confidence that he might not find in other areas of life. But outside the safe walls of home, life was not always easy. The boy started attending a small local school when he turned 5, and the challenges there were different. While his teachers were mostly kind, other children could be cruel without understanding why. Many of them didn't know how to interact with him, and some laughed at the way he spoke, the way he walked, or the way his eyes lit up when he talked about something he loved. He tried to make friends, but often the teasing made him retreat into himself. The hallways and playgrounds, which should have been places of joy and laughter, sometimes became spaces of quiet fear and embarrassment. Yet even in these moments, he never lost his smile completely. Music remained his sanctuary, a place where no one could mock him or make him feel small. At home, his parents noticed the toll the outside world was taking on him. They spoke to him gently about the teasing, telling him that he was special and that he should never let anyone's words take away his happiness. They encouraged him to play the piano whenever he felt sad, and sometimes in the evenings the whole family would sit together and listen as he played. They celebrated every small progress he made, from learning a new note to remembering a full tune. The living room often echoed with music and laughter, a safe space where the boy could be himself without fear or judgment. His piano teacher arrived when he was 6, and she quickly recognized the boy's natural talent. Unlike other students, he had an intuitive sense of melody and rhythm. He could feel the music in a way that seemed effortless, almost magical. His teacher was patient, knowing that he learned differently from other children. She would show him a note or a chord, and within minutes he would replicate it, sometimes adding his own little touches. It wasn't just memorization. It was as if he could sense the emotion behind the music. His parents were amazed and proud, but they also knew that the path ahead would not be easy. Talent alone would not protect him from the teasing or the doubts of others. School life continued to be difficult. Children who didn't understand him often called him names or laughed at his mistakes. Some of them would hide during group activities, excluding him from games. Even though these actions were small, they left a mark on his young heart. Yet he never let their laughter stop him from doing what he loved most. Whenever he felt sad or lonely, he would rush home and sit at the piano, letting the music flow through him. In those moments, the notes seemed to wash away the harsh words and the teasing, leaving him with a sense of peace and accomplishment. His parents noticed that the more he played, the more confident he became, slowly building a strength that no one could take away. At school, there were also moments of kindness. A few classmates noticed his dedication and would sit quietly beside him during breaks, asking him to play a tune. Their curiosity often turned into admiration when they realized that he could play melodies they themselves found difficult. These small gestures of acceptance gave him hope that not everyone would judge him, and they reminded him that his uniqueness was something to be proud of. His teacher also supported him in the classroom, praising his efforts and encouraging him to participate in music-related activities. These small victories made a big difference, helping him to navigate a world that often seemed harsh and unforgiving. The boy's parents also found ways to connect him with other children who shared similar interests. On weekends, they would take him to local music classes or community events, hoping to surround him with positivity and support. These experiences allowed him to see that he was not alone, that there were others who valued his abilities and who understood the challenges he faced. Each encounter, each smile or word of encouragement strengthened his resolve. He began to understand that while some people might laugh at him, there were also many who would celebrate him for who he was. As he grew, the boy began to develop a quiet determination. He realized that life might not always be easy, but he could find strength in his talent and passion. Music became more than a hobby. It became his voice, his way of communicating with the world when words alone were not enough. He practiced diligently, not just for praise or recognition, but because it brought him joy and a sense of purpose. His parents watched with pride as he navigated the challenges of childhood with courage and resilience, learning to face both criticism and kindness with a steady heart. There were moments of struggle, of course. Sometimes, after a particularly hard day at school, he would sit silently at the piano, unsure if he had the strength to keep going. His parents would sit beside him, offering gentle words and holding his hand, reminding him that every note he played was a triumph, no matter what others said. Over time, he began to internalize these lessons, learning that his value was not defined by the opinions of others, but by his own passion, effort, and heart. Even in simple daily routines, his love for music shone through. He would hum tunes while brushing his teeth, tap rhythms on the table while eating, and sometimes wake in the middle of the night just to play a short melody that had come to him in a dream. His life was filled with small, beautiful moments of creativity and expression. These moments reminded his family and those around him that talent and joy often emerge from persistence and love, even in the face of difficulties. By the time he was 8, it was clear that his piano skills were remarkable. While some children his age could barely keep a rhythm, he could play simple pieces with emotion and clarity. His parents and teacher began to imagine what could happen if he had the chance to perform in front of others. They hoped that one day he could share his gift with a larger audience, and perhaps in doing so, inspire people to see beyond the surface, to recognize the beauty in every individual, no matter their differences. Though the outside world still posed challenges, the boy's spirit was strong. He learned that laughter at his expense could not diminish the joy he found in music. He discovered that dedication, patience, and passion could create a space where he felt confident and free. His life, though marked by struggles, was also filled with moments of light, discovery, and growth. And in the quiet, safe corners of his home, with the soft glow of the piano keys under his fingers, he began to understand something profound, that his abilities were his own, and they had the power to touch hearts and change minds when the world was ready to listen. The boy's journey was just beginning. Though the road ahead would be filled with new challenges, there was no doubt in the hearts of those who loved him that his music could speak in ways words never could. Every day he grew stronger, more confident, and more determined to show the world that his condition did not define his potential. In his heart, he knew that one day, the music he loved so much would have a chance to shine beyond the walls of his home, touching the lives of many and leaving a lasting mark on everyone who listened. As the boy grew, his parents noticed that his connection with music was becoming deeper and more meaningful. What started as simple curiosity had now turned into a passion that defined a part of who he was. He no longer just tapped the keys randomly or copied what he heard. He began to understand the feelings behind each note, the way music could express emotions words sometimes could not. When he played, there was a clarity and honesty in his performance that touched anyone who listened, even if they didn't know him well. His parents often watched in awe, wondering how such a small child could communicate so much through music alone. At school, life remained challenging. Children can be cruel without even thinking about it, and the boy often faced laughter and ridicule because of his differences. Some would point at him and whisper. Others would imitate the way he spoke or moved. It hurt him deeply at times, but he was learning slowly to ignore the negativity and focus on the things he loved. Music became his refuge. Whenever he felt discouraged or alone, He would retreat to the small corner of the classroom where a keyboard was kept for music lessons, or practice at home in his living room. The sound of the keys became a shield, a way to protect his spirit from the harshness he faced outside. His piano teacher, who had been working with him for several years, recognized his growing talent. She could see that he had more than just an ear for music. He had intuition, emotion, and an ability to feel rhythm in a way that was rare for someone his age. She began to challenge him gently, teaching him new techniques and more complex pieces. At first, these pieces seemed difficult, almost impossible, but the boy had an incredible determination. He would practice for hours, sometimes alone in his room, carefully learning each note, repeating it over and over until he could play it smoothly. The teacher encouraged him not only to focus on the notes but also on expression, helping him understand that music was about telling a story, conveying emotions, and connecting with listeners. There were moments when the boy felt frustrated. Learning a new piece could be exhausting, and sometimes his fingers would not cooperate, or he would hit wrong keys in front of his teacher. He would feel embarrassed, thinking he might never get it right. But each time, his teacher and parents reminded him to be patient with himself, to take pride in the progress he was making. Slowly, he learned that mistakes were not failures. They were opportunities to learn and improve. He started to see the piano not just as a tool for music, but as a friend who understood him, who never judged him, and who always responded to his persistence with a melody that grew stronger each day. At school, however, the teasing continued. Some children did not understand why he spent so much time with the piano. They made fun of him for being different, laughing at the way he sometimes struggled with words or movements. Sometimes he would come home feeling sad, asking his parents why people were so unkind. His parents would hug him tightly and remind him that those who teased did not see the heart or talent inside him. They told him that his abilities were special, and that one day people would recognize the beauty he brought into the world through music. These words gave him hope and motivation to keep practicing, even when the outside world was unkind. One afternoon, his teacher suggested something that would change his life. The school was planning a small music recital, where students could perform for parents, teachers, and classmates. At first, the boy was hesitant. The thought of performing in front of so many people made his hands shake and his stomach twist with nerves. He worried that the children who teased him would laugh even more, and the idea of standing in front of an audience felt overwhelming. But his teacher and parents encouraged him gently, reminding him that this was an opportunity to share something he loved, and that he had been preparing for this moment for a long time. Over the next few weeks, he practiced tirelessly. He spent hours learning the piece his teacher had chosen for him, a melody that was both challenging and emotional. At first, he struggled to keep up with the rhythm and the changing notes, often making mistakes that made him frustrated. But each time he stumbled, his parents and teacher reminded him to take a deep breath and try again. Slowly, repetition turned into confidence, and confidence grew into skill. He began to feel the music in his fingers, allowing him to play more naturally and with expression. By the time the recital arrived, he could play the piece almost perfectly. But what mattered most was not perfection. It was the heart and emotion he poured into every note. As the day of the recital approached, the boy's anxiety grew. He knew some students would be in the audience, and he feared their reactions. There were nights when he could not sleep, worrying about what might happen, but he also felt excitement. He was beginning to understand that this moment was his chance to show the world a part of himself that went beyond what people could see on the surface. He had something unique, something powerful, and this performance could allow others to experience it too. His parents reassured him constantly, reminding him that no matter what happened, they were proud of his hard work, courage, and dedication. When the day finally arrived, the boy entered the recital hall with his parents by his side. The room was filled with people, teachers, students, and parents, all waiting for the performances to begin. He felt his heart pounding in his chest, his hands clammy with nervousness. For a moment he hesitated, wondering if he could go through with it. But then he remembered the hours he had spent practicing, the encouragement from his parents and teacher, and the joy he felt every time he touched the piano keys. Taking a deep breath, he walked to the piano and sat down, his small fingers hovering over the keys. The room was silent as he began to play. At first, the notes were soft and tentative, as if he was testing the waters. But soon he relaxed into the music, allowing it to flow naturally from him. The melody filled the room, capturing everyone's attention. The people who had doubted him, who had teased him, could not help but be drawn in by the beauty of his performance. There was emotion, expression, and honesty in every note. Even those who had come expecting to see him struggle found themselves leaning forward, mesmerized by the music. The boy felt a strange mix of fear and joy as he played. He had never experienced an audience so focused entirely on him, listening to every note, every pause, every expression. The laughter and teasing he had feared seemed to vanish in the presence of the music he created. For the first time, he felt the power of his talent, the ability to move others, to make them feel something beyond what words could describe. The recital became more than a performance. It became a moment of connection, a space where he could express himself fully and authentically. When the final note faded, the room erupted in applause. The boy blinked in surprise, unsure how to react. People were clapping, smiling, and some were even cheering. The pride and joy in his parents' eyes made his heart swell. For the first time, he realized that his differences did not limit him. They could become his greatest strength. He had faced the fear of judgment and ridicule, and through courage, practice, and passion, he had turned it into a moment of triumph. After the recital, many of the students who had teased him began to see him differently. Some approached him with hesitant smiles, others with genuine admiration. The boy was learning a valuable lesson. While not everyone would understand or accept him immediately, talent, dedication, and a kind heart could slowly change perceptions. His parents and teacher felt immense pride, not just because of his skill, but because of the courage and resilience he had shown. The recital was a turning point, a first step toward a future where he could continue to grow, share his gift, and inspire others. In the days that followed, the boy practiced with even more passion. The experience of performing had given him a new sense of confidence. He was beginning to see that his talent could open doors not just for recognition, but for connection, understanding, and respect. Even at school, small changes started to happen. Some students who had laughed before now asked him to play tunes during recess, curious about the music that had captured their attention. While challenges and teasing had not disappeared entirely, they had less power over him. Music had become his voice, his shield, and his bridge to the world outside his home. His parents continued to nurture his talent with patience and love. They understood that the journey ahead would have ups and downs, but they also knew that the boy had something special, a combination of courage, passion, and talent that could carry him far. They encouraged him to keep learning, exploring new pieces, and expressing himself through music. Each day he discovered something new about himself, about his abilities, and about the impact his music could have on others. The boy was no longer just a child who loved the piano. He was a young musician learning to navigate a world that often misunderstood him. Through persistence, practice, and unwavering support from his family and teacher, he was beginning to find his place, a space where his voice mattered, where his abilities were celebrated, and where he could inspire others simply by being himself. The lessons he was learning about courage, patience, and believing in oneself would stay with him for the rest of his life. Music had become more than a pastime. It was a path to growth, resilience, and connection. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges and moments of doubt, the boy was learning that every note he played was a step toward his dreams, a way to share his heart with the world, and a reminder that even in a world that sometimes laughs at differences, talent, determination, and a kind heart can shine brighter than any obstacle. The weeks after the recital were some of the most important in the boy's life. The applause and encouragement from the music recital had given him a new sense of confidence, but he also realized that performing in front of people could be both exciting and frightening. Every day, he would sit at the piano and practice for hours, focusing not only on the notes but on the emotions behind them. He was beginning to understand that music was more than just sound. It was a way to communicate, a way to tell a story that could touch people's hearts. His parents and teacher noticed a change in him. He seemed more focused, more determined, and also more patient with himself. Mistakes that once made him upset were now treated as part of the learning process. If a note was played wrong or a rhythm was slightly off, he would pause, take a deep breath, and try again. Slowly, he began to see that success was not about perfection but about effort, practice and the courage to continue even when things were hard. His family encouraged this mindset, reminding him every day that he had already achieved something extraordinary by performing in front of an audience. One day, his teacher brought up an opportunity that would challenge him further. The school was planning an annual talent show, one of the biggest events of the year. Students, parents, and teachers from all over the community would come to watch, and participants would have the chance to show their skills on a much larger stage than the small recital hall. The boy's teacher suggested that he should participate, emphasizing how his talent and hard work had prepared him for this moment. At first, he felt a mix of excitement and fear. The thought of performing in front of so many people made him nervous, and he worried about what others might say. His parents gently encouraged him, reminding him of how well he had done at the recital. They told him that the talent show would be a chance to share his gift with even more people, and that they would be with him every step of the way. The boy began to imagine himself sitting at the piano on a large stage, the lights shining down, the audience waiting in silence. He could feel the excitement building inside him, but the fear of being laughed at was still there. He knew that some students might not be kind, that some might still mock him for his differences, but he also felt a spark of determination. This was his chance to prove not just to others, but to himself, that he could face fear and still succeed. Preparation for the talent show became the center of his life. He practiced every day, sometimes for hours at a time, learning a new piece that was both challenging and beautiful. The music was complex, with fast passages, soft melodies, and sudden changes in tempo. At first, it seemed impossible, and there were moments when he felt frustrated and wanted to give up. But each time he stumbled, his teacher reminded him to be patient and persistent. "Every note you play is a step forward," she said. "Every time you try, you grow stronger." His parents supported him with unwavering encouragement. They would sit with him in the evenings, clapping softly when he got a difficult part right and gently guiding him when he made mistakes. Sometimes, when his hands felt tired or his fingers seemed clumsy, they would remind him that it was okay to rest and try again. Their love and patience created a safe space for him to practice, and slowly the boy began to feel more confident. He was learning not just music, but also resilience, focus, and the power of believing in himself. As the days went by, he practiced not only the notes, but also his presence on stage. He learned to sit tall, to breathe deeply, and to focus on the music rather than the audience. His teacher emphasized that performing was about expressing emotion and connecting with people, not just playing the right notes. The boy worked hard to feel the story behind the music, imagining the emotions he wanted to share with the audience. He began to understand that each performance was a conversation, a way to speak to people without words, using only the piano and his heart. Despite his dedication, the boy's fears never completely disappeared. Sometimes he would imagine walking onto the stage and seeing the students who had teased him at school. He worried that their laughter might echo in the auditorium, and the thought made his stomach twist. On these days, he would take long pauses from practice, holding his hands over the piano keys and closing his eyes, imagining the moment and telling himself he could do it. His parents and teacher reminded him that fear was natural, and that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep going despite it. These lessons stayed with him, helping him prepare not just for the talent show, but for challenges he would face in life. The week before the talent show, the boy's confidence grew even more. Each day of practice brought small victories. A difficult passage played smoothly, a melody expressed perfectly, a rhythm maintained without error. He began to see that his hard work was paying off and that he had something special to offer. His parents were proud, often telling him how amazed they were by his dedication and talent. Even his teacher noticed a difference in his demeanor. He was no longer just a shy child who loved music. He was becoming a young musician who understood the importance of preparation, focus, and expression. At school, whispers about the talent show began to spread. Some students were excited to see who would perform, while others were curious about the boy and whether he would participate. A few of his classmates who had once teased him seemed unsure, watching quietly as he practiced in the music room. The boy noticed their looks but tried to focus on his music, reminding himself that he could not control what others thought. He knew that the talent show was about him, his effort, and his love for music. Their opinions did not define his worth or his abilities. The night before the talent show, the boy stayed up a little longer than usual, practicing the piece one last time. He moved through the notes with care, making sure he could feel each melody in his fingers. After finishing, he sat quietly at the piano, taking a deep breath and imagining the stage, the audience, and the lights. He felt a mixture of excitement and nerves, but also a growing sense of readiness. He knew that he had prepared as best as he could and that now it was time to trust himself and the music. His parents peeked in to check on him, smiling proudly at the focus and determination in his eyes. They hugged him tightly, telling him they loved him and that he was already a winner for all the effort he had put in. The morning of the talent show arrived, and the boy felt a whirlwind of emotions. His stomach was nervous, his hands slightly shaky, but he also felt a spark of excitement. He put on the outfit his parents had carefully chosen, a simple yet neat set of clothes that made him feel confident. They walked to the school together, holding hands, talking quietly, and reminding him that the performance was about expressing himself, not about proving anything to anyone. The walk to the auditorium felt long and full of anticipation. The sounds of chatter, footsteps, and laughter filled the air, and the boy's heart beat faster with every step. Backstage, the boy waited quietly for his turn. He could hear other students performing, some singing, some dancing, others playing instruments. Each act seemed to add to his nerves, but he also felt inspired. He was not alone on this stage. Others were sharing their talents too, and that gave him courage. His parents stayed close, whispering encouragement, holding his hand and reminding him to breathe. His teacher knelt beside him, giving one last smile of reassurance. "You're ready," she said softly. "Just play the music and let it speak for you." When it was finally his turn, the boy walked to the piano, feeling the bright stage lights on his face. The auditorium was filled with people, their eyes watching him intently. For a moment, fear threatened to take over, but he remembered all the hours of practice, the encouragement from his parents and teacher, and the joy he felt whenever he played. Sitting down at the piano, he took a deep breath, placed his fingers on the keys, and began to play. The first notes were soft, almost tentative, but soon he found the rhythm and let the music flow naturally. Each note carried emotion, each melody told a story. The audience fell silent, captivated by the sound. Some faces that had once seemed indifferent now showed surprise and admiration. The boy's fingers moved with confidence, expressing feelings that words could never capture. He felt a sense of connection with everyone in the room, as if the music was speaking not just to them, but to a deeper understanding in their hearts. With every measure, his confidence grew. He played not just with skill but with expression, allowing the music to tell his story. The students who had teased him began to see him differently, realizing that his abilities were extraordinary. The teachers nodded in appreciation. The parents in the audience watched with pride. And even the audience members who had never expected much were now fully engaged, listening intently. The boy was no longer nervous. He was in the moment, letting the music guide him, feeling the power of his talent and the joy of sharing it with others. By the end of the piece, the auditorium was completely silent for a brief, perfect moment. Then applause erupted, filling the room with sound. The boy looked up, blinking in surprise as people stood and cheered. He felt a rush of pride and happiness, knowing that he had faced his fears and shared his gift with the world. The journey to this moment had not been easy, but every hour of practice, every challenge faced, every moment of doubt had led to this triumph. The boy had not only performed, he had inspired, moved, and connected with everyone who heard him. The moment the boy began his performance at the talent show, the auditorium seemed to hold its breath. The first notes floated through the air softly, delicate but deliberate. Every eye turned toward him, not out of expectation of failure, but out of curiosity, an almost invisible shift in the energy of the room. He had faced fear countless times in small ways before, but this was different. This was the stage where all the doubts, all the teasing, all the moments of uncertainty came together. For a brief moment he felt a pang of nerves, his fingers hovering over the keys, unsure if he could meet the invisible weight of the audience's attention. Then, as if something inside him clicked, he remembered the hours he had spent practicing, the patience of his teacher, the love and encouragement of his parents, and the countless times music had brought him peace when the world felt harsh. He pressed the first key, then the next, letting the melody unfold naturally. The sound was soft at first, but it had a quality that could not be ignored. There was honesty in the music, something unspoken yet deeply felt. People who had come expecting a simple performance soon found themselves drawn in by the boy's skill and emotion. Every note seemed to tell a story of courage, resilience, and a spirit that refused to be diminished as he continued. His fingers moved faster, more confidently, creating a rhythm that was both intricate and mesmerizing. The audience was silent now, completely captivated. Even those who had once teased him could not help but watch with amazement. There was something remarkable about the way he played, the way he let his emotions guide his hands, the way the music seemed to flow directly from his heart. Each chord, each pause, each subtle change in tempo added depth to the performance. It was no longer just notes on a page. It was a conversation between him and everyone in the room. He felt a sense of liberation as he played. The stage lights, the audience, the whispers of doubt, all of it melted away, leaving only the music and him. He remembered the nights he had spent alone, practicing in the quiet of his room, imagining the melodies, correcting mistakes, and building confidence. Every challenge, every moment of frustration, every tear had led him here. And now he realized that fear could not control him. Music was stronger, more powerful, and it had given him a voice that demanded to be heard. The middle of the piece was the most challenging. The tempo changed, requiring both speed and precision. Many children might have stumbled at this point, nerves taking over, but the boy was focused. He felt the rhythm in his chest, the melody in his fingers, and the story in his heart. Even as the audience leaned forward, eyes fixed on him, he did not waver. He played each passage with care, allowing the emotion to shine through. It was not perfection that made it extraordinary. It was the passion, the courage, and the determination to express himself fully. The room was silent, yet every person there felt the music in their own way, touched by its authenticity and power. As the performance neared the end, the music became softer, more gentle, like a conversation slowing down, a story reaching its conclusion. The boy's fingers moved with confidence yet delicacy, each note carefully placed, each pause intentional. There was a beauty in the simplicity, a truth in the emotion. The audience was completely absorbed, hanging on every note, every moment, every nuance. Some parents wiped away tears, some students stared in awe, and even the teachers seemed moved by the honesty and depth of the performance. The boy could feel their attention, their admiration, but he did not let it distract him. Instead, it fueled him, helping him pour more of himself into the music. When the final note was played, there was a brief silence, a pause in which time seemed to stand still. The boy lifted his hands from the keys, blinking in surprise at the stillness around him. Then, as if released from a spell, the audience erupted into applause. The sound was thunderous, filling the auditorium and bouncing off the walls. People stood clapping and cheering, some whistling in delight, others calling his name. The boy's heart raced, a mixture of pride, joy, and relief washing over him. He had faced his fears, embraced his talent, and shared it with the world. The applause was not just for the notes he played, but for the courage, resilience, and heart he had shown. His parents rushed to the front of the stage, tears in their eyes, clapping and cheering louder than anyone else. The teacher came forward as well, her face glowing with pride. They hugged him tightly, holding him close as if to say without words, "We always knew you could do this." The boy felt a warmth he had never experienced before, a sense of acceptance and recognition that went beyond the applause. It was a validation of all the hard work, all the moments of doubt, all the nights spent practicing alone. He realized in that moment that his music had the power not just to entertain, but to touch hearts and change minds. The reactions from the audience were overwhelming. Students who had once teased him approached hesitantly, their faces showing a mix of surprise and admiration. Some whispered apologies, others simply smiled, unable to find the right words. Teachers and parents praised him, some offering compliments on his technique, others on the emotion he conveyed. For the first time, the boy felt truly seen, not just as a child with Down syndrome, but as a musician, a storyteller, and a person with a gift worth sharing. The experience was transformative both for him and for everyone who witnessed it. After the performance, the boy felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Performing had been intense both physically and emotionally, but it had also been one of the most rewarding experiences of his life. He realized that fear could be faced, that ridicule could be overcome, and that talent combined with courage could create moments of magic. The applause, the cheers, the smiles, they were all proof that he could touch people's hearts simply by being himself and sharing what he loved. It was a lesson he would carry with him forever. In the days following the talent show, the boy noticed changes in his school life. Some students who had laughed at him before now treated him with respect. They asked him about the music he played, wanting to understand how he could create such beauty. A few even confessed that they had been wrong to judge him based on appearances. These small shifts in attitude were significant. They showed him that perceptions could change when people took the time to see beyond differences, to recognize effort, talent, and heart. The boy felt a quiet pride in knowing that his music had helped open minds and hearts. The boy's parents were overjoyed by the impact of his performance. They saw how his confidence had grown, how he carried himself differently, and how he interacted with others. The talent show had not only showcased his musical abilities, but also reinforced the lessons of perseverance, courage, and self-belief. They continued to encourage him to explore his passion for music, to try new pieces, and to share his gift whenever he could. Every time he sat at the piano, they reminded him that the most important thing was the joy and expression he felt, not the approval of others. The experience also strengthened the bond between the boy and his teacher. She had believed in him from the beginning, patiently guiding him, correcting mistakes gently, and encouraging him to express himself. The talent show validated her dedication, showing that her guidance had helped the boy not only improve technically, but also grow emotionally and personally. She continued to nurture his abilities, challenging him with new pieces, helping him refine his technique, and instilling in him the understanding that music was a lifelong journey. Full of discovery and growth, music for the boy had become more than a skill or a hobby. It had become a lifeline, a way to navigate the world and express himself when words were not enough. It had taught him resilience, focus, and courage. It had allowed him to rise above ridicule and doubt, to stand tall in the face of fear, and to connect with people in ways that transcended appearances. Every time he played, he felt a sense of freedom and empowerment, a knowledge that his differences were not limitations but part of what made his music so special. The talent show was a turning point, a moment that would stay with him for the rest of his life. It had shown him that he could face challenges and succeed, that people could recognize and appreciate his efforts, and that his passion could inspire and move others. He had proven to himself and to the world that his abilities were real, powerful, and worthy of attention. The experience gave him confidence to continue pursuing music, to practice with dedication, and to dream bigger than he had ever dared before. Looking back, the boy's journey up to this point had been filled with obstacles, moments of doubt, and encounters with people who did not understand him. But it had also been filled with love, support, and opportunities to shine. Every note he had played, every hour he had practiced, every piece of advice from his parents and teacher had prepared him for this moment. And now, as he looked forward to the future, he knew that music would continue to be his path, his voice, and his way of connecting with the world. The applause, the admiration, and the pride he felt were more than just temporary reactions. They were affirmations of his talent, his courage, and his perseverance. They reminded him that he was capable of amazing things, that his differences could be strengths, and that his heart and dedication mattered more than the judgments of others. The boy had learned an invaluable lesson, that true success comes not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them with courage, determination, and a love for what you do. As he left the stage, the boy felt a sense of peace and accomplishment that he had never known before. The experience had changed him, giving him confidence and hope, and showing him the power of music to transform not only his own life, but also the lives of those who listened. It was a moment of triumph, a celebration of talent, heart, and perseverance, and a reminder that even in the face of fear and ridicule, one could rise, shine, and inspire. The days after the talent show were filled with a mixture of excitement and reflection for the boy. The performance had left an imprint not just on the audience but on him as well. He found himself replaying the music in his mind, thinking about the way each note had flowed, the emotions he had tried to convey, and the moment the audience had erupted in applause. That reaction had given him something he had never experienced before, a deep understanding that his efforts could touch the hearts of others. It was more than praise. It was proof that he had found a way to communicate with the world, to share a part of himself that went beyond words. At school, things began to change slowly but noticeably. Students who had previously laughed at him now approached with curiosity and respect. They wanted to know more about the music he played, how he learned the pieces, and what inspired him. Some asked if he could teach them a simple tune or play a piece for them during lunch breaks. The boy, once hesitant and shy, began to respond with a quiet confidence. He realized that he could show kindness and patience, answering questions and encouraging others without resentment. The teasing had not disappeared completely, but it had lost its power. The talent show had shifted the way people perceived him, and he felt a newfound sense of belonging. His parents noticed the change in him as well. They saw him walking with his head held a little higher, speaking with more assurance and interacting with peers in ways he hadn't before. They were proud, not just of his musical ability but of the courage and resilience he had shown. They encouraged him to continue practicing, exploring new pieces and even imagining future performances. Every day they reminded him that his journey was just beginning, and that the love for music and the joy of sharing it would continue to guide him. The boy also began to form new friendships. Some students, inspired by his dedication and talent, started spending time with him, joining him during music practice or simply sitting together and listening as he played. These small connections were precious. For the first time, he felt accepted not because he had proven himself to be normal in someone else's eyes, but because others recognized his talent, his heart, and his effort. Music had opened doors that words alone could not, creating bonds that transcended differences and teaching lessons about empathy, respect, and understanding. His piano teacher continued to challenge him with new pieces. She introduced him to compositions that required more skill, patience, and emotional depth. Some were difficult, and there were moments when the boy felt frustrated or overwhelmed. But he had learned to approach challenges differently now. He took each piece step by step, allowing himself to make mistakes and learn from them. The confidence gained from the talent show had given him a sense of perseverance that carried over into every practice session. Each note, each melody, each hour spent at the piano became an opportunity to grow, to express himself, and to deepen his connection with music. The boy's parents began exploring other opportunities for him to perform. They enrolled him in community events, small competitions, and local concerts. Each experience was a chance to share his gift and connect with a wider audience. He often felt nervous before stepping onto a new stage, but he remembered the lessons of courage and resilience he had learned. He knew that fear was natural, but it did not have to control him. Each performance, whether in front of a small gathering or a larger crowd, reinforced the understanding that his abilities were meaningful and that his music could inspire and move others. At home, the piano remained a sanctuary. The boy spent countless hours exploring new compositions, improvising melodies, and even composing small pieces of his own. Music had become more than a skill. It was a way of life, a constant source of joy and expression. His parents supported him fully, attending performances, helping him practice, and celebrating every achievement, big or small. The family had come to understand that the journey was as important as the destination, and that the boy's happiness, confidence, and personal growth were the true measures of success. The boy also discovered that his music could teach lessons beyond talent. At school, teachers began to notice changes in the classroom environment. Students became more empathetic, patient, and supportive of one another. They saw that effort, dedication, and kindness mattered more than differences or limitations. The boy's example showed them that everyone had unique abilities and that judging someone based on appearances or preconceived notions could prevent the discovery of something extraordinary. His journey inspired a shift in attitudes, slowly transforming the community around him. One afternoon, the boy was asked to play at a school assembly. This time there was no fear, only a sense of purpose and pride. He understood that music had the power to inspire, to bring people together, and to communicate emotions that words often could not. As he played, the auditorium was filled with attentive faces, some moved to tears, others smiling with appreciation. The boy felt a deep connection with the audience, knowing that each note carried his effort, his heart, and his journey. It was a moment of pure joy, a reminder that music was not just about performance, but about sharing a piece of oneself with the world. Over time, the boy's confidence in other areas of life also grew. He began to participate more actively in class, engage in conversations with peers, and express his opinions with assurance. Music had given him a foundation, a way to experience success, and the understanding that challenges could be faced with courage and determination. The lessons he learned at the piano translated into life: persistence, patience, focus, and the importance of believing in oneself. Each small step forward reinforced his sense of self-worth and his belief that he could overcome obstacles and achieve meaningful goals. The boy's journey also strengthened his relationship with his parents. They shared quiet moments together, discussing music, life, and dreams for the future. They encouraged him to explore his creativity, to take risks, and to embrace opportunities without fear. Their unwavering support had been crucial in every step of his journey, providing the foundation of love and encouragement that allowed him to flourish. They celebrated not just the performances, but the growth, resilience, and joy that came from the journey itself. As he continued to play, the boy began to understand the deeper significance of his music. It was not just for applause or recognition. It was a way to connect, to communicate, and to inspire. He discovered that music could bring comfort to those who were sad, courage to those who were afraid, and hope to those who felt limited by circumstances. The realization that his gift could positively affect others filled him with a sense of purpose and pride. He knew that every note he played had meaning, that every melody carried a piece of his heart, and that through music, he could make a difference. The boy also became a quiet source of inspiration beyond his school. Family, friends, neighbors, and members of the local community began to recognize his talent. Some would come to listen when he practiced, while others invited him to perform at community gatherings. The impact of his music extended far beyond the recital halls and classrooms, touching lives in ways that words could not describe. People admired not just his skill, but his courage, resilience, and the heart he put into every performance. The boy had become a symbol of determination and the power of pursuing one's passion despite challenges. Through all of this, the boy remained humble. He never sought attention or praise for the sake of recognition. His focus was always on the music, on expressing himself, and on sharing joy with others. He continued to practice diligently, exploring new pieces and techniques, always seeking to improve and grow. The love for music that had begun in his early childhood had matured into a lifelong passion, a calling that guided his life and shaped his identity. Looking back, the boy's journey was filled with lessons. He had faced ridicule and doubt, yet he persevered. He had struggled with fear, yet he found courage. He had been underestimated, yet he proved that talent, dedication, and a kind heart could overcome obstacles. His music had not only brought him confidence and joy, but had also inspired those around him, fostering empathy, respect, and understanding. The boy learned that his differences were not limitations, but part of what made him unique and capable of extraordinary things. The journey also reinforced the importance of support, love, and encouragement. The patience and belief of his parents and teacher had been instrumental in helping him reach his potential. Their guidance had given him the tools to face challenges, develop his talent, and embrace opportunities. The boy understood that while talent could open doors, it was the combination of hard work, courage, and support that truly allowed someone to shine. As he continued to grow, the boy looked toward the future with hope and determination.